Hello everyone and welcome back to another weekly episode of Throwing in the Towel. Each week I dive deep into the NFL season and make the tough call on which teams it's time to give up on, whether it's due to a string of injuries, bad luck, or a losing streak, or just plain bad luck. Some teams just don't have what it takes to make it to the postseason. And ladies and gentlemen, we are at the week 15 episode, so stay tuned to the end to see which team has thrown the towel on this week. And I talked about it last week. This could be the last throwing in the towel of this NFL season. I'll have to play it by ear and see how week 16 shapes up in terms of who gets into the playoffs, who gets eliminated, and all that. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more NFL insights. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into this week's episode, starting with the AFC East, which has a lone representative in the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins headed into week 15 winners of 4 of 5 as they try to scratch and claw their way back into the playoff conversation. And they would leave Houston defeated and 6-8 on the brink of playoff elimination. The odds are not in their favor at the moment. The Dolphins are good, but they're not good enough. And over the last 3 seasons, Miami has beaten the opponents it should beat. But when it comes to the quality competition, or the teams that, when it comes to the quality competition or teams above 500, that's where they struggle. And since Mike McDaniel has become the head coach, the Dolphins are 3-13 against opponents with a record above 500. Considering Miami has to compete with the likes of the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, well, right now they're just not currently capable of doing that. Instead, it might be time to consider a change at head coach. Listen, I like Mike McDaniel. He's done some good things for the Dolphins, but he hasn't been able to win when it matters. So that could factor into that. Then we go to the AFC North, which has no representatives this week. So the only team left to represent this division is the Baltimore Ravens, who got a convincing win over the Giants. The Steelers clinched the playoff spot, so they are out of the running. We go to the AFC South. Congrats to the Texans. They have officially clinched the division. I think everybody pretty much saw that one coming. So with the Texans winning the division, the towel thrown on the other 3 teams, like I said, AFC South out of contention. Then we wrap up with the AFC West, which has the Los Angeles Chargers this week. And with each passing week, it's getting more difficult to believe in this team as a legitimate playoff threat in the AFC. Sometimes statistics don't tell the whole story about a team. For example, the Los Angeles Chargers come into week 15 with the number 1 ranked scoring defense, slowing down. But the thing is that the offenses that they slowed down were mediocre and below average. Some of those offenses led by rookie quarterbacks. You put Los Angeles against a high-scoring opponent like Tampa Bay, and its defense looks more porous and stout. The Buccaneers would drop 40 points on the Chargers, and honestly, after a performance like that, it should leave everybody questioning whether this club can hang with some of the other teams in the postseason. And so with that, we move on to the Division Representatives, which of course are going to be the Dolphins in the East and the Chargers in the West. And between these 2 teams, well, it's fairly obvious. I got to go with the team that has a lower playoff percentage in the Miami Dolphins, the team on the outside looking in. The Chargers are very much in the postseason, but again, how far do they go? Who knows? And for the Dolphins, it looks like ultimately that Tua injury, even though it came early in the season, it put them in a hole, and they haven't been able to. It put them in a hole long enough to where, even though they started to climb their way out of it, they were not going to be able to get out of it in time to make a run at the postseason. Now we move over to the NFC side of things, and we start in the East. So the Eagles having clinched the playoff spot. The Commanders got a win over the Saints, so no representative in the East here. In the North, the Vikings are officially in the playoffs, so they are out of the running in the throwing in the towel segment. They did get a win over the Bears. So right now in the North, the only team that can represent is the Green Bay Packers, and they got a win over the Seahawks. So now we move to the NFC South, which also has no representatives, with both the Falcons and Buccaneers getting wins. The Falcons win a little bit less convincing, but it got the job done nonetheless, however ugly it was. And then we move to the NFC West, which has our 2 teams for the NFC this week, the 49ers and the Seahawks. And excuse me. And for the 49ers, well, let's be real. there's going to be a new representative for the NFC in the Super Bowl this year. The 2024 season for the 49ers is, at this point, just lost. And it really was like one mess after another for this team. It started in the offseason with holdouts, and then it continued into the season with key players getting injured like Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, and Christian McCaffrey. Two of those guys would ultimately go down and not return. Well, Ayuk would go down in the season and then be lost for the season. McCaffrey tried to make his return in season, then got injured again and was lost. Bosa was able to come back for them, so there's that. The disappointment of this season is going to be fresh in San Francisco's mind come off season, and also for the rest of the season. But John Lynch needs to turn his focus to next season, 2025. The 49ers aren't short on high-priced talent, whether it's McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle on offense, or Joey Bosa and Fred Warner on defense. Adding a massive deal for Brock Purdy to the team's books, though, that's something they're going to have to look into, as it's not going to be easy, and it's going to require some tough decisions to be made. So the 49ers had quite the championship window, weren't able to capitalize, and this team is most likely going to be looking different next season. And for the Seahawks, it's not bad enough that the Seahawks were beaten soundly by the Packers Sunday night. They lost that now drops them out of the playoffs and puts the Rams in pole position for the NFC West. But this team also lost Geno Smith to a knee injury and defeat. Now, it appears that they have dodged a proverbial bullet with the injury, but there's still very little margin for error with very little time left in the season. Seattle still has to take on the Vikings in Week 16, and then they close out the season against the Rams in Week 18. Now, if they play like they did against the Packers, forget about the postseason. Enjoy your off season. That's kind of what it looks like now. And so with that, we go to the division, the NFC Representative this week, which I'm going with the 49ers in this one too. The Seahawks still have a chance, better than the 49ers. It stands like the 49ers are like a 1% chance. So with that leaves the 49ers as the lone representative this week. So now we move into the recap section, so it has some new teams here being eliminated. The Panthers, it took a loss to the Cowboys, but they finally were finally officially knocked out of the postseason contention. So their season's officially over. Granted, they still have some time to try to figure out what they want to do with Bryce Young. I think another team that got eliminated this week was the Bears as well too. They are officially out, and that team is a mess. Good Lord. Other teams in here as well too. I mean, ultimately, there's not much to say about the teams that have been eliminated. The Saints, tough loss against them too. Spencer Rattler certainly played better than Jake Haener did, so there is that. The Colts, that was just tough right there too. That Jonathan Taylor fumble, and then the Nick Bonito fumble taken back to the house, especially when your defense played so good in the first half, getting those 3 interceptions. The Bengals, I can't remember, how did the Bengals do? I don't remember the top of my head. That's right, they won. They beat the Titans. Yeah. The Cardinals got a win over the Patriots, but ultimately wins for these two teams aren't going to matter all that much. Same thing with the Cowboys too. They got a win. It's not going to matter. And so with that, we move on to this week's team. So between the Dolphins and the 49ers, ultimately I went with the 49ers, which is crazy to say about this team. But it's been that kind of season for the 49ers, as I talked about. It's been one mess after another. And ultimately, injuries have just derailed this team, and they have not been able to return. And as I talked about earlier too, this team is going to look different. Brock Purdy is going to get paid. Question is how much he's going to get paid, and who might the 49ers have to part ways with in order to ensure he gets paid. You just paid Brandon Ayuk, so I imagine he stays. Christian McCaffrey, I don't think he goes. George Kittle, Joey Bosa, Fred Warner, I don't think either of those guys go. I could certainly see Deebo Samuel going. He hasn't been very productive for this team. That's kind of where the 49ers are at right now. I don't anticipate them trading their head coach, Kyle Shanahan. I know that one's been floated out before, and I certainly respect any team that's willing to at least try their hand at that. I respect it. It's not going to happen, though. I think the 49ers will just kind of use the injuries as an excuse for why this season went the way it went, and just continue on with the same quarterback, coach, and general manager. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Throwing in the Towel. Who knows? Maybe next week I'll have another episode. Maybe this will be it. If this is it, it's been fun doing this, and I look forward to doing it whenever that is, whether it's next week or next season. See you all next time.